That's right. Live on Chicano Tube, live on Chicano Street. I appreciate the beautiful Linda Raza that's already in the comment section. We're getting back to our regularly scheduled program. Here we go. Here we go. Empower, educate, do something good while we're here, cabrones, on this pinchy earth, or with this social media, or with this internet. I'm honored to have a very special guest. Before I bring him in the studio, let me go through the formalities. You already know, cabrones, okay? Gracias, all the day oneers. Gracias to everyone in the members only. The members only is the backbone of the community. They're the ones that have exclusive access to all the VIP peleas and content creators, series of fighting. The pre-order is already done. I just haven't posted the link yet for the Thanksgiving. Gracias to all the members only. Gracias to all the Chicano pages and all the Chicano panels. Okay, enough witere. There's a lot that I want to get to tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to go on and bring a very, very special guest, mi hermano, my brother from another mother, Kiyahuitl. How are you, hermano?
Saludos. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody was doing well. And you guys had a pleasant day today, Every day above la tierra is a good day. You know that saying.
Y todos vamos al mismo pozo.
Pues sí. You
There's
know what I
another.
mean?
Para los que quieren vivir ricos en esta vida, tener joyas. No, I'm just kidding. Vas a ir al mismo pozo. Anyways, mi hermano is here. Hermano, when I saw you cross my feed, very, very, to say the least, intriguing, interesting. Here on Chicano Street, we hit the 1 year mark June. And shout out to all of you guys. I need you guys to do me a favor and do yourself the favor, actually, is go over to mi hermano Kia. I want to
Kiawi.
pronounce it right.
So it could be easier for you. You could just say Kiawi.
I got it. Go over to mi hermano Kiawi's channel on YouTube. Just search his name. It's going to be in the description of the bottom of this video. Guaranteed, okay? But that's after I log off, okay? Do me a favor. Just search his name. Let's run those numbers up because, gente, there's not a lot of people that are on YouTube kicking knowledge, okay? Especially at this level. And this is something that interests you and interests me because mi hermano Kiawi, the majority of my subscribers are Chicanos, just to let you know. The most of them are. And when I
Yeah.
talk about the indigenous, they want more and more, and they can't get enough. So, gracias for coming, hermano.
Yeah. Pues como empezamos, how do we start this?
Well, this is really about strengthening our identity. So I'll go ahead and start it off. Don't worry about that. This is what we do,
Mhm.
hermano. I've known that we're in a system right now. Those of us that live in the United States, like in the school systems, we know they picked and they choose what they wanted
Yeah.
to teach us, and they left a lot out of there because, of course, America has a lot of black eyes, right?
Yeah,
So
most definitely.
that's the reason I here on Chicano Street we birth a lot of critical thinkers, and we tell them seek the truth, seek for knowledge. What do you think about that? About the school system, and what is it really trying to produce in this country?
I think living in the United States, they want us to forget who we are genuinely. Like they want it to be, I guess, in some essence, be Americanized, and it's always a conflict when people hold on to their ethnic background or their heritage or culture. It's always an issue, just because primarily the people that founded this country, they don't really necessarily have a culture other than to pillage, rob, steal, murder, etc. The violence culture, I should say, and it's not something that is not really known. It's just a lot of people just kind of pass it over their head, you know. But yeah, the school system always, educating. Obviously, they're just going to show, I guess, what would be considered an honorable take on United States getting its territory the way that it did. But and they're not going to educate you on the perspective of the victim, as I would like to think, like like how it all started with the Mexican United States war. It was based on slavery, just because of the white people that were allowed to get into what is now known as Texas or Texas. Um, they wanted to bring slaves into that region, and Mexico abolished that to have slavery in Mexico. So much so that an Afro indigenous or Afro Mexicano became president, Guerrero, and that's the state that I'm from Mexico. And he was Afro Mexicano. He was the first. I would like to think that he was the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first black president in the Americas as a whole at that time. But they don't teach you things like that, man. That it was the war with the Mexican American War was just based on uh, having slaves, and the method that they did was pretty strategic, like pretending that these fools would attack themselves, but pretending to be Mexican in some aspect, and then just projected as like, oh, they're attacking us, they're attacking Americans, and pues ahí tronó la guerra between United States and Mexico.
No, what's funny is so there's some truth in the history that is out there. Then we're talking about a system that just spoon feeds the shit. But there is some truth to certain things, like you said. Slavery was a base for the Mexican American War, and also, pues, I mean, los mexicanos, they didn't want them. They didn't want the annexation of Texas. And so the way they teach it, though, is that, okay, they saw the weakness in Mexico coming off of centuries of war. They were battle stricken. And here's the U.S. just waiting, already doing Louisiana purchases. And then they started some beefs on the border lines, those unoccupied zones or whatever they were when they were gray areas. And then they just kicked off the guerra. And it looks like they make it seem like they look like they won because they had better generals.
Hmm.
And what do you think about that?
Well, most definitely Mexico.
Was
I
bleeding
think
already?
Mexico had that territory roughly around like 15 to 20 years. Texas was a part of Mexico because Mexico was a new country at the time. We have to remember that, you know. Before then, it was Nueva España, and Nueva España did have slaves, but when Mexico came about, that was abolished like shortly after. And having to inherit um, Nueva España's territory, it was definitely a challenge at the time because within the country we were fighting who was going to be what, quién va a ser el primary general, da, 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 the politicians, they weren't uh, adequate at the time or informed with a lot of information at the time, and I think that caused it showed the weakness at the time, and just like how you said that United States took advantage of that moment of a new country that is creating itself inside out, and unfortunately, they took that opportunity to take what was once Nueva España and Mexico's territory.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me backtrack if I may. If I just may, I wanted to give. I've seen some comments going by a little bit more of your background, cabrón. ¿De dónde eres? And when did you start learning or getting into o sea, lo que has estudiado, lo que hablas on IG
Sí, sí,
and
sí.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm from so I was born and raised here in Santa Barbara, but when I was born, my family took me to Mexico. So I was going back and forth to Mexico to my pueblo, like straightly direct to my pueblo. We weren't like over here fucking sightseeing and all this other shit. We just never had that privilege, We just
Pues
slow
sí.
and but my pueblo se llama Acayahualco, Guerrero, and it's in la zona norte de Guerrero, which is where the
Mm,
municipio de Tepecuacuilco and where la ciudad de Iguala, pero it was once known as Igualan, and it's just that region, the northern part of Guerrero. And where I'm from, there's actually my region does appear in the codices of Mendoza. So my region where I'm from, they talk about Tepecuacuilco. Tepecuacuilco, we're like a little village to them, but we're like super close food.
yeah.
We might as well be a part of them,
Well,
but
yeah, if you're
which
in the
we are.
codices, this is dating back to an ancient city, you could
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
no?
And then that region, the region from my region became a part of the Mexicas like 10 years after when it started. When the pact started between the three city states,
Mm,
the Tlactuani Itzcoatzi, he took over the region where I'm from. And pues the people were pretty much down because we
yeah.
had similar ideologies and whatnot. So my region was a part of the Mexica Empire since pretty much kind of the start to the end. But the thing
Oh,
is
okay.
that it wasn't as fully developed, obviously, as comparison to Tenochtitlan. So,
But you would say,
Spain,
like other people would say, when you know your tribe, or when you know your roots, pues, ¿quién te puede decir, verdad?
yeah.
O sea, you
So,
know, so
the people there are Nahua, and obviously I'm Nahua. Fortunately, colonialism, you know, having to indoctrinate into Mexico's uh, way of life, I guess you so to say. Unfortunately, a lot of my family members don't even speak fluent Nahuatl, but they do have Nahuatl in their Spanish. It's not. It's like a Spanglish, so to say, you know.
yep.
But in this aspect, is Nahua and Spanish together.
Mm,
And when it was funny is that when I was growing up around here, I'll be saying Nahuatl words to my homeboys or to my homies or friends or whatever, and those fools were just like, they're like, "What the fuck is this fool saying?" You know, like, what is this guy saying about? You
because you
know,
were born in Santa Barbara, but did you say you often traveled back to
to my pueblo.
Guerrero, Northern Guerrero?
Yeah, yeah, hell yeah.
Like
My
what? Like
parents took me
spend
over there, like,
half the year? How would you do it? Or
yeah, half the year.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
my
you weren't
parents
a
would just take
chamaco
me
in
over there out there,
school where
dog.
you had to wait in school. You weren't like rotating on the summers or algo así. I was always rotating
No,
in the
no way.
summers on Mexico.
They, I don't know, dog. My parents were not. They're not educated Mexicanos, so to say. You know, they didn't got the luxury to fucking get their proper education. So in
Mm.
actuality, though even my parents are elders or whatever, but in some instance,
Okay.
they're like children in some aspect. You know, like I'm was raised by children, even though they were obviously adults and me enseñaron lo que
Yeah.
podían enseñarme. But education was they knew that I wasn't a school kid, you know,
So
and
you
pues
grew up
yeah.
in Santa Barbara. Carnal, I don't even know if you knew this. Santa Barbara is about the same distance as Salinas from the ocean.
Yeah, 4 hours. I passed through, Salinas before.
You went to
Uh,
San Jose is on top, the neighbor up there.
yeah, yeah, I
I heard
passed
you
through
say that.
Salinas, I passed through Gilroy before I got into, east side of San Jose or Sanjo,
Sí, sí, sí,
and
sí.
yeah, I remember that shit. At the time when I went over there, bro, I was gang related. Man.
Este, Pelón, Pendleton, Cortez,
Todo pelón, toda esa madre, you know, you could just
Mickey's.
tell I was a person from the South, you know, I was with my carnal and my primo at the time
And what
over
was the
there.
trip for? Was it family, business pleasure?
Nah, it was just, pues at the time tenía una novia, güey, at
Okay.
San Jose. She was a good girl, but I fucked that up, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you meet people however you meet them, and you just go
yeah, yeah,
and do what you
so that
do.
was like, yeah, that's the reason why I went up to San Jose, and I wasn't actually, I think I was in Norteño territory, bro, and
Está padre.
y yo de pendejo,
Oh,
you know,
man, este cabrón.
just mobbing it. Just we didn't get hit up. You know, not that saying that it doesn't
Sí,
happen. We
sí,
just
sí, 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 sí,
got
sí.
lucky or fortunate that we just didn't get hit up.
Yeah, no,
But
absolutely, absolutely. So
this
yeah,
shit
Santa
happens,
Barbara
dude.
is like the same distance. I see. So I just want to get back to how at what point did you do a deep dive or start studying or make it a point to want to learn what you know now?
I think like how most of us, you know, Mexican Americans or whatever, we have a loss of identity. We don't really know where exactly we fit in this limbo area, you know. And some people are not able to get out of that limbo area, you know, and so they identify with many identities. But for me, I knew that I was different from most Mexican Americans because obviously not only because of my physical appearance, it's just my way of life, the way that the foods that I would eat, and just it was just different, bro. You know, and like I know that a lot of my homies are from like Jalisco, like Sinaloa, like these
Mm,
northern states, right?
sí,
And then
Simón.
it's not it's not uh it's known that those states have a lot of light skinned Mexicans, you know, and
Pues sí.
pues I'm not that. So I had to deal with like a lot of
I get
colorism
it.
and shit like that.
Oh,
I
growing
think I
up.
dealt, yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah, I did. You know, but it came more so from my country folk people, people from Mexico, people que supuestamente eran mis paisanos, you know,
Mm.
and it is what it is. And then I started to I started to realize that, you know, that que era indígena, and that I wasn't just like a normal individual, so to say, you know. Uh, and I always knew, after I found out, I always knew that, like, was there's a reason why I was fucking different from my community, from my homies, and where I was raised. And Santa Barbara is, even though it's a lujo city or a touristic town, it's a fucking racist ass city, bro.
Sí,
Like,
te
it's
digo, te digo,
it's
amigo.
just nutty out here, dog. But
Ándale, so
yeah, just, you know, just started to know, like, myself a little bit more. I started questioning myself, like, why am I so proud to be Mexican? Like, I started questioning myself why I am the way that I am, you know. Uh, I started to say, like, why do I, like, stand up so much for this or that? And I started to realize that I was a fucking pendejo and I didn't really have an identity, you know, that it was authentic and genuine and deep. And once I started to do history checks on my region, I started to realize a lot of things from my region. And then I started to do a family genealogy, finding out where my last name came from. And
Mm,
what's unique about
okay.
my last name, it's uncommon in Mexico. It's My last name is Gantes. That's how my family pronounce it. And so originally there was a friar, a missionary from Spain that came over, like, literally, like, 1523, 2 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan, and
Yeah.
he began to create the La Doctrina in Tenochtitlan. He created the School of Natural or something. I forgot the name of it. But this missionary, when uh when he got here, originally he implemented the educational system of the Mexicas at the time, and he got like 50 of the brightest indigenas that were from noble lineage, like children of high
Sí,
status
sí, sí.
people. And yeah, so he indoctrinated, but he noticed that he wasn't able to stop the habits of the cultura que teníamos at that time, which is a lot of bloodletting rituals, um, whatever it may be, you know.
Sí, sí, sí,
So
sí.
then later, he made the decision to pretty much get 1,000 bright indigenas children and pretty much isolate them from the rest of the pueblo, which is Tenochtitlan. So for, I think, I forgot how many years he had them isolated. They wouldn't see their parents. They wouldn't see nada. You know, they were literally babies, kids, and they were raised inside this building for quite a while.
Mm.
And the reason why he did this is because he wanted to disconnect the ideology of Mesoamerica from the children and teach them, pues, la catolicismo y todo.
Oh, pues sí.
And but anyhow, the reason why I'm saying all this is because when his students, I guess what to say, passed the doctrina or whatever, when I don't know how they determine that, but he would give his last name to noble men, to, like,
Mm.
chavalillos, you know,
Yeah, hand it
jóvenes
down.
que he would give his last name to them. So it could be whatever, like, oh, ya no eres, you know, Chicahuac, you know, ya no eres Chicahuac, ya eres Pedro or whatever, you know, and then you're Pedro de Gantes. So he would throw the S at the end. And
Mm,
this last name, the S, well, it's not an S, it was a Z at the time.
mm,
So people would recognize who's who, you know, like, oh, this guy is fucking fue la escuela de Fraer, or or this is the son of such
yeah.
and such. Like, people, it was like a status symbol at the time of nobility. So after a while, you know, after, let's say, after the colonialism started, like, to really gentrify Tenochtitlan to what is now known as Mexico City, the indigenous people that were of, like, they weren't really treated fair there. You know, it was only kind of like the noble ones will always be treated a lot more better, so to say,
Yeah.
based on their last names. But over time, como Mexico was barely being developed, for a very long time, Mexico, to get your education, uh, you got to pay, right? That's part of the history of Mexico, that you had to pay to get your education. So now you have a generations of indigenas that didn't know how to write, or just for whatever reason they never got education like that to know how to write in Spanish or lo que sea. Y
See.
hablaban mucho, talking in their native language and having a little bit of Spanish in it, whatever. This is like the progression. So even to this day, I can guarantee you, if you have your grandparents and you come from an indigenous background, ask them if they can write their names.
Mm.
And a lot of them, they're gonna have a hard time to write their shit. And then a lot of the times their name is written like kind of scribbly, like
Yeah.
a child,
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying
And
that both sides, then mother and father, both are from the
yeah.
same tribe,
So
so you could pretty much trace it
what
back.
I'm trying to get at is that, so my last name, even though my last name is Gantes
Mhm.
with an S at the end rather than the Z, that only happened because my when my family came over here from my pueblo, for whatever fucking reason, my parents decided to change the Z to an S.
Mm.
But before then, it was the Gantes. But then they dropped the de and just had Gantes with the Z. And then, like I said, because of lack of education and our grandparents, from at least from my side of the family, weren't able to get proper education, so they didn't know how to write Castellano, which is Spanish. So they did their best.
Right. There were
Right,
all these things kept transposing throughout the years, and
Yeah,
letters started transposing,
yeah.
and people were the
So
"de" comes from Mexico too. Like if you're from a pueblo, they'll say "de" and then the pueblo.
that's kind of like Castellano culture in a bit,
Mm.
in reality, because it's just like a title. It was a title with amongst the Spanish people.
See.
And here and before Mesoamerica, we did have like titles and all that stuff, but it wasn't like that, like, oh,
Mm.
you know.
No,
But
absolutely.
that's
That's Europe.
pre-colonial stuff. And but yeah, just how things change. You know what I'm trying to get at. So my last name comes from that Freyer, so that means my antepasado went through his school system, and obviously got indoctrinated into Catolicismo, and y así va el ritmo, and until my family got to where la zona norte de Guerrero. And my prediction or assumption is that my ancestor took off to the region of like Cuernavaca, Morelos, and then
Okay.
eventually got to where my pueblo was at, just to kind of get away from the city, to get away from that poverty at the city, and not being in, just became straight up campesinos. I come from a long line of campesinos. When I was doing my genealogy,
See.
todos estaban agricultural, and I was like, God, now I can't get a doctor.
Yeah, that's the
But I'm not
genealogy.
embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed of it, though. I take pride in it. I take pride in it that that I do come from a long line of campesinos, field
Absolutely.
workers, and
Absolutely. You want to
I
know
kind
Salinas
of
is on the Spencer, Salinas is on the corrida run, cabron. We're from here to Yuma. It's one of the like farm worker headquarters. East Salinas is like East LA. O sea, just lleno de campesinos. All the hotels have muddy boots. Todos tienen
yeah. Oh
machetes.
shit, I might
That's
have some
all.
light problems.
No, it's all to the good. I'm gonna keep it going right now, and I do want to. I'm gonna ask you something right now as soon as you get situated. But gracias to everyone that's tuning in right now. Mi hermano Kiyahuitl in the casa right here. Don't forget to subscribe over to his channel. It's the same name on YouTube, gente. So do me a favor and get that out of the way. Subscribe to his channel over there. Something interesting you said. Well, I'll give you a couple seconds, but you can still probably hear me and talk. Something that you said that's real, it's really interesting, carnal, is I want to
Uh-huh.
ask you is how do you identify, like, nationally, ethnically? I know these are all different, racially. I want the people to get an understanding, because when we just throw out terms and generalities, I'm gonna give mi hermano 30 seconds. Don't worry, carnal, you're all
Yeah,
good.
give me a second. Let me
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
plug this
When
in.
we throw when we throw out these generalities, Americano, Mexicano, Mexican American, Chicano, or you start naming your tribe, you can't just throw it out there. you need to have context behind it. And what am I describing? What am I talking about? Am I talking about my birthplace, where I was born? Am I talking about maybe a culture, a subculture of where I'm at, etc.? So here on Chicano Street, of course, we're first generation Mexicano Americanos. If you were to ask me, I'm gonna say, well, nationally, pues nací aquí, even though I'm dual citizen. So I was born in the United States. I was born right here in Salinas, right, surrounded by fields, cabrones. So I'm American by that. I'm Mexican, and again, that's not nationality, but now this is, I guess, ethnicity, because 100% of my blood comes from Mexico, and even racially, I probably would still say I'm Mexicano. But what are hermano? If you got it, you good?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay, if you can, how would you describe yourself nationally, nationality, ethnically, and racially?
well, for me, nationality wise, I'm Mexican American, and for racial, I'm in American Indian, Mesoamerican, indigenous. You know, it just kind of depends how I feel that day, I guess, when I'm writing paperwork. But ethnically, I'm a Nawa, so that's how I identify, and it's just because of how I know myself and what I've learned about my family history and stuff like that. The racial part, I think, and what is obviously commonly known is just American native, American Indian, or native, in here in the United States.
Mm.
They don't even really put Mesoamerica. But a lot of times when I ever feel like medical work or paperwork, I put Nawa. Fool. I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's what I do. Like,
I was
but
noticing when I was like registering myself that nowhere in the U.S. system did they ever have a box Mexican,
yeah,
uh,
well, it's
Mexican
because
American, and oftentimes I had to put Islander. I don't know what else to put. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't even have native,
Well, it's because it's
only Alaskan.
it's impossible. I want to say this to everybody. It is impossible to genetically come out as Mexican. And what I mean by that, there's no DNA test that will just straight up say you're 100% Mexican, because we have to remember that Mexican is not a race, and Mexico is a diverse country. We have Asian people in Mexico, Korean, whatever, Obviously, we have Afro lineage in Mexico, indigenous lineage, and Spanish lineage, and German, Jewish. There's a, Mexico is a diverse country. It's not just either you're Spanish and fucking indigenous. No, Mexico is a diverse country, and those people that are living in Mexico, even though they're racially from another continent of the world, they're still Mexicans, because that's a nationality identity. It's not a racial identity.
Mm. No, I
And so
yeah.
when people say I'm 100% Mexican, it's just kind of
Mm.
ironic, because it's not a race. I've said statements like, "Oh, I'm 100% 100% guerrerense," like, but the reason why I say that is because both my parents come from the same pueblo, and they both come from the same state. So that's why I'm not half Michoacano, I'm not half nothing. I'm straight up 100% guerrerense.
Right.
But you can't say 100% Mexicano, because, like I said, it's just a national identity, and what I say is just a state pride.
Hmm.
It's not. It's publicly known that you can't be
Yeah.
100% genetically a person from Guerrero. Like, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing is the state itself, que es una bandera, and another thing you're talking about is the blood that's pumping through our veins. And well, of course, when the Europeans came over, pues, when the Europeans, correct me if I'm wrong, before the Europeans ever stepped on this continent, there was no pale skin. Is that accurate?
uh in our region.
Lighter tones. Let's say, how about lighter tones? There was no
Yeah,
lighter tone.
there was lighter tones, but not too light. In fact, there's even people even darker than I am, you know, and and yeah, I think the lighter complexion is not like, no disrespect to you, mano, but they weren't light as you, dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, I know.
maybe in like in Alaska and Canada, but in Mesoamerica, uh,
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was light skins, but not too light, like white light, you know?
I had another hermano blew up on TikTok, carnal, 150K. He's a construction worker. He's in Texas. My hermano Wayward son, 360.
Oh, yeah, I know the Mano.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. He's saying he
I've
didn't know.
spoken
He
to
just
him.
he did a little video, and then he said he went back to hanging drywall, and by the time he came back, he had 10,000 subscribers, and his phone almost died from the all the bzz, 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 and it's just
Yeah,
spitting knowledge on there. And he opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I was like, chingado, things that us Chicanos, a lot of the raza, especially if you're third, fourth generation Chicano, you lost, any kind of going back to where your grandparents are from, or sense of that kind of heritage.
yeah, that's
People
true.
get lost in identity and don't know nothing.
Mhm. Yeah,
And he
you
made
know
me realize, like, oh man, all of us Chicanos, we got pinchy four, we have European last names blasted on our back in old English.
yeah, yeah,
Chingado.
yeah, it's just how unfortunately, how just life has came about in this side of the world, you know? And
And
it's
how history
and
unfolded.
yeah,
Hermano, let me
it
ask you this. What do you
uh-huh.
think about creation? What were you told as far as your tribe, Mexica tribe, is the origins of creation? And I love to also ask you about religion after this. I'm trying to stay on a certain thing so we could stay on the timeline we talked about. What is your understanding as far as your ancestors taught you on the creation of everything?
Well, to be honest, it's very gray now, you know, with the information that I've gathered and the stuff that I've learned, uh, it's cloudy. There's no like a real creation story because it's distorted. It got corrupted over the centuries, the beginning of colonialism. But I would like to say that yeah, like the people originated from the north, what is known as Aztec and Aslan and all that stuff. But they don't really say how it all started. It was the creation story
Ah,
of
okay.
the Aztecs and Aslan. It's just unfortunately it's got lost to the colonialism, you know. So I can't really answer that, but but I am aware that for me, I am aware that Tezcatlipoca or Tezcatlipocatzin was the main one, you know. It wasn't one god, but he was the main one, like the head of all the other rest of the other gods, creators, deities, however you would like to call them, because so many people give them so many terms like energy, toda esa madre. But yeah, Tezcatlipocatzin, it was the main one. It wasn't no Quetzalcoatl, none of that shit. Because you gotta understand, Tezcatlipoca, he's not good, nor he's not bad either. And he's also not for us. And you know, like how Christianity comes at you with like, oh, you know, Jesus
He's a
died on the
loving
cross for
God,
you and all
unconditionally
this
loving
shit. Like,
God.
nah, it's nothing like that. It's Tezcatlipocatzin is judgment, war, conflict, and all kinds of shit. It's just fortune and misfortune. You know, he does things to people so he can get a laughter. Laughter is associated to him. Many things
Yep.
are associated to him, but one of the things that he's associated with is judgment. He makes the judge. He makes the judgment of things
Mm,
happen. And how I know this is because in the creation story, when we're creating the world, so to say, uh, Tezcatlipoca was the first. Pretty much kind of failed, and then I think I was Tlaloc. I'm having a brain fart right now, but eventually Quetzalcoatl got on there. You know, this is how powerful Tezcatlipocatzin was, that he was able to knock him off from being the sun god. If you know, he obviously has more power than or more influence over Quetzalcoatl. If he was able to knock him off of that pedestal, and he did it because he made that call, he made that judgment. Why didn't Quetzalcoatl fight him afterwards, or you know, if they were at par with with power, if you would like to know it as? No, because he knew what's up. He knew that this Tezcatlipocatzin was the one not to mess with.
mm.
You know, I know that, and everybody played a role You know, there was see the main role, how it all started initiated was pretty much through Tonacasihuatl and Tonacatectli. Those were two. One was a feminine energy, and then one was a male energy, and they created, you know, obviously the celestials, and from there we had the northern celestials and the south celestial. We had fucking what's her name, Cuatlicue, and before she gave birth to fucking Huitzilopochtli. This is the mythology off of this,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, absolutely.
how,
Yeah.
how he fucking just killed all of his siblings from the south. And no, es un desmadre, pero this guy, I don't know how the hell. There's some things that I kind of like wonder about. Before anything was created, was celestial, right? And before Coatlicue got pregnant by that feather, there was no birds. There was no birds, bro. How the fuck was there a feather? Right? There was
Right,
nothing
right,
was
right, right, right.
created. But the only thing that I think had feathers was, it's obviously Quetzalcoatl. He had feathers because he was a flying serpent. And I don't know, this is just my
See.
little thing of my own, you know. There's not nothing. This is not, take this as a bullshit, if anything. But I just kind of trip out, like, well, if he was the only one with fucking feathers, and then how Coatlicue got pregnant, and then Huitzilopochtli came out.
Right, right. And you're saying a lot of this had to be told because a lot of the literature was got destroyed. O sea,
Yeah,
they literally tried to wipe out and not 99.9, but 100% assimilate the people, which is common con estos pinches países that were conquering back then. It was like only the strong survive. They conquered, they conquered. It was like always guerras and wars. So when the Europeans came, boom, and que empezaron a quemar todo, and the only thing that's existing is what's passed pues down the storyline, ¿verdad? O sea,
Mhm.
cuentos.
Yeah, I wish I can give you like a definitive answer on that. You know, just because it's just unfortunately a lot of it was lost, or is kept away from us. I would like to think. Well, I wouldn't want like to. I wish that none of that shit happened. But I would think that the Vatican might have a lot of codices that are not publicly out in Mexico. You know, there's a
What
lot
do
of
you
artifacts out there in the world that were pretty much robbed from Mexico. But in all honesty, I wouldn't give a fuck about no copili or no artifact or anything like that. I would rather fight for those codices than the
mm.
headdress of Montezuma, because it's more it has valuable information. And like I said, I think the Vatican may have some stuff that either they forgot about it or they just don't want to give it back.
The Pinchy Vatican. I know you're watching too. Someone tag those cabrones over here. We want everything that belongs to native land to come back. De esos pinches cabrones. You're right. You rather have that, which is knowledge and history, than Moctezuma's headpiece that's in Austria or something like that, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's a great piece. I mean, back
Yeah, of
then,
course it is. But
feather was very valuable, right?
I would
Feathers were
always
like gold, no?
yeah, I
To the
know.
güeros, gold to the güeros, the Europeans, gold to natives, wasn't it more pues hands-on material things that you can make?
Well, feathers was a status, obviously, you know, and they were obviously, it was considered to be precious or whatnot because it was colorful, just like how the flowers were colorful, and they were seen as something sacred in some aspect. But it wasn't the only thing. There was also precious stones, rubies,
See.
jade, serpentine, kinds of minerals. But I think the most valuable one that the indigenous Mesoamerican people appreciated the most was obsidian, because without
Mm.
that shit, you weren't able to cut meat, you weren't able to cut anything. That was the most valuable thing to have at that time. You know, to have weaponaries.
Isn't it like thick shards of like it looks like glass?
Yeah, well, it is volcanic glass. It's volcanic glass.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I actually
Um,
have a piece in my little altar that I got in my background.
okay. Okay.
Um,
That's what they say they used to do with, and I guess it segues into this question. I asked Norby's this when they said there was sacrifices that were being done. Wasn't that the same kind of tools that would use? That was the sharpest knives they had was obsidian.
yeah, yeah. I saw Normies doesn't believe that there were sacrifices. I saw a video on
Well,
that.
let me ask you then. Great segue into this. Did it happen or is it Spanish propaganda, hermano?
It happened. I believe that it did happen strongly because
Tribalism.
there's segments where you could see a religious view. Like from one of the things that occurred that it was, I guess now would be considered very graphic and woo 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 because we have a westernized mindset, is that there were kids that were pretty much groomed to unalive themselves, to sacrifice themselves. You know, kind of like the seppuku from the samurai, right?
Okay.
So these people, these kids were pretty much groomed to do that ritual, and before they do that ritual, they would go up the temple, whatever temple it may be, and they would play a flute, a sochi, forgot the name of it, but it's a flower flute. They would play, and they would get to a certain amount of steps, and then they will break that. And by the time they get to the and by the time they get to the top, they already had broken like I don't know 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe flutes, and then they would do the act themselves and unalive themselves. That would happen. Cannibalism would also happen, and only the noble ones would do that. The nobility, because they thought that consumption of whatever you consume, you become that. So, and so if a great warrior died and you wanted to be like him, you would eat his corpse. Now, and this act wasn't a common act to the regular peasant, indigenous people at that time. It was like I said, of high status. They would eat human flesh, and it's not something unique to Mesoamerica, and it's a global thing. It seems like we have human nature in us, apparently, you know.
See.
But yeah, that's it's all it's real shit. You
And
know, as
was there also sacrificing for like religious like views like again because all we know is pues
yeah, it
YouTube
was.
University or libros
People
to
want to say that
fuel
it
the
wasn't a.
sun, to fuel fertility, to fuel the crops or something like that.
Uh, yeah, no, because all rituals had different rituals. There was so the calendario or whatever, the thing you have in the back right here in the background, and the one that I have in the background is it was just a tracking, like to know when to do certain festivals. And so there was festivals for the Mictlanteucli, there was festival for Tlaloc, there was festival for Huitzilopochtli, Tezcatlipoca. There was festivals for all of that, and whatever views it had at the time is difficult to grasp because you and I, we're corrupted in a westernized mindset. You know, we were taught to what is right, what is wrong, and all that stuff. So we can't necessarily grasp the the meaning of behind these acts because we are, like I said, corrupted. But I try to get myself in that mindset, and I can't really comprehend it. And I wish that I could, but unfortunately, I can't. But yeah,
Well,
these acts were real. They were not fabricated. And in fact, the Mexicas weren't the only ones that were doing that. You know, Maya, a lot of Mesoamerican, even Purepecha, Zapotec, were all doing that. For whatever reason, that custom in Mesoamerica, it was just like a Normandy, you know.
no, that was
But
crazy.
of course, people wouldn't want to think that, you know. Just because my ancestors were doing those acts doesn't mean that we're not. That don't mean that they were savages. They weren't diplomatical or anything. They were actually very intelligent. They foresee the world in a different perspective than the old world, which is Europe and all that sort of shit. You know.
Because
Uh,
there's a narrative that that the Spanish, the Europeans wrote, pues ahí los encontramos, and they're fierce savages, they're barbarians, they're not like o sea, making them be the opposite of civil.
well,
And so
yeah,
their
I want to
narrative
say.
is if that's true, or was that propaganda?
Well, I want to say that the majority of the people that the the Spanish colonizers, the ones that came over here, they weren't educated men, fool. Like they were dedicated for war or voyages. They weren't philosophers. They might have been one or two or whatever, but majority of them so fueron illiterate mother flowers. They didn't,
God, muscle
and these
head,
are the fools that
muscles
were
for
writing on
brains.
diaries.
Yeah, muscles for brains.
There were these were the people that were writing in diaries. So it's
They
I
had no
don't.
pen. All they had was a sword. You're saying?
Yeah, but they didn't like so they would have to use
Uh,
words like that. They were barbaric and all this other shit because they didn't know any other way to express themselves. And then, like I said, their mindset was different from Mesoamerica. For whatever reason, like I said, sacrificing or bloodletting acts, rituals, and stuff like that. That's all could be found in codices. It's not, and these were things were written by indigenous people. Like if it was fabricated, then why these codices have these images? Why are they displayed? Why do they show these stories behind them, which a lot of people can't really comprehend? Like I said, why is it there? If it was not genuine.
exactly. No, yeah, it's true. Hermano, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and change topics a little bit here. I want to ask
Mhm.
you about religion. I've heard you mention European religion, and European religion, well, obviously came to this land, is not of this land. What do you think of European religions and their effect on those that have indigenous blood in them?
I mean, for me as an individual, I like believing in Christianity or Hinduism or any of religious views overseas is you're you're disgracing your ancestors in some aspect, in some shape or form, and there's nothing. To me, I'm like, well, why their religion is more superior than my ancestors' religion or view or the way they see the world? Why are they more importante? Why is
Mhm,
mine not valid? Why are my ancestors not valid? Why are they not foreseen or anything acknowledged? Why is that?
mhm,
Because colonialism. We think of colonialism with like war and conflict, but there are also many forms of colonialism. Like I said, indoctrination by that Freire, you know, pushing and that narrative of Catholismo and all that stuff. People are still doing that to this day. Every fucking church that is being built on any block, whatever religion it might be, they're pushing that narrative. They're trying to cause or give influence. That is a form of colonialism, just like how the government is. It's just how it is, unfortunately. And me denouncing uh Christianity. Honestly, I was a Christian at one point, but
mhm.
denouncing that and denouncing Jesus, denouncing all that shit, like for me, it's just it's just not for me anymore because I realized how that religion got into this land and how it was utilized to conquer my ancestors. And es una tristeza because if you look at it at a third person view and you see these indigenous people, how they utilize Catholicism to push and mixture with indigenous, it's like it's just you see it as like, damn, this is just all colonialism. This is just a product of colonialism. There's nothing else to say about that. These people and this philosophy is foreign. Why not restore your ancestors' ideologies? But that's because, in actuality, the westernized mindset, they made us all fucking pussies. If in other words to say, because we're scared of death, but my ancestors were not afraid of death. You know, they just saw it as like a Normandy, and the reason
Mhm.
why they would see it as a Normandy is because we all fit in a we all have a place in this world, but and if you want to look at it, all there's life and death and everything, right?
Oh yeah.
There's just predators, there's herbivores, there's omnivores. There are all these things, right? It's all elements, and we are part of that element. And my ancestors understood that element. That there's things that have to die, there's things that have to live, and there's things. It's just a weird. It's not a weird. It's just ideology that I don't really comprehend very much, but it's real. It was real to my people. And what is it to say that it's not as real as fucking Buddha or Gandhi or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ra or Anubis and all these other creators, the Greek goddesses and all that shit. Why is their shit is more valid than my people's?
Mm.
I'm gonna say this, bro. I haven't prayed for over 10 years, maybe. Never said Jesus. Never said none of that shit.
To the
I'm saying
Christian
it
God.
now, but I'm just saying I never prayed to him at all. And I'm gonna tell you, my life has been shit at, for a very long time. There's been a lot of injustices that's occurred in my, not only to me, to my people, and etc. Right? Regardless if I was praying through all those times, nothing has changed. I'm still in the same predicament that I was when I started to be a devoted Christian at the time. So and I saw, because my people are not loved by Jesus, because the people that brought that are supposedly their chosen people. If God, if that God was genuine, why didn't he just descended and just stop this madness against my people? Because in the Bible it doesn't talk about like, oh, go murder and pillage under my name. They didn't say, the Bible doesn't talk about that. You know, but I don't know. There's a
No,
lot of
yeah, you're right.
complexities
It
in that,
doesn't.
and I know
And
that
like
it's
in
a
the year of
sensitive.
the Crusades, in the year one, every time people saw a
Yeah,
cross, obviously people were getting slain, and it was just
yeah,
a
and
lot of
and
blood.
it's a sensitive.
It is.
What up? What up, the Chalot? It's a sensitive topic because I know that people are very devoted into that. Um,
But
and I challenge you sometimes.
all you're doing is giving context that this is a European religion. It wasn't here. It's not indigenous. It's not native. And for, of course, here the raza, everyone on Chicano Tomb on Chicano Street again. Here we're strengthening the gente's sense of identity, and the people are tapping in on their indigenous side more than ever now. More than ever. That's why you, carnal, like being on YouTube and doing videos, kicking knowledge and education, cabron, you're gonna go up. And I just dropped a comment right now. Don't forget to subscribe over to his YouTube channel. Do yourself the favor. I'm already subscribed, and subscribe over to mi hermano Kiyahuitl's channel. So if someone wanted to tap in more with their indigenous, say they're like me
Hmm.
and you, right? First generation, aquí nacimos Estados Unidos, and say they wanted to tap in with them. Where do you recommend they go? What can they research to really find these roots? Because since we're
We'll
talking about a
begin
lot
with
of the history is not written, what
yeah.
two, three
I think
places do people go to try to tap into the roots?
obviously everybody's journey is going to be different from one another, but I guess the greatest start that you can do is asking the elders of your family members, tus abuelos, or los hermanos de tu abuelos or the abuelas, or whatever. Ask them, hey, ¿dónde somos? ¿Qué es lo que sabe? Originalmente somos de aquí, or whatever. Just ask these questions, and then you can actually go to a website that is like where you can go to familysearch.org, and you can find a lot of Catholic documents, baptisms, death certificates, all that shit of your ancestors, of your people, your family history. And if it lines up to the stories that your grandfather or your elders from your family tells you, then you're heading in the right track to finding out where you originate, where you like, you find the history of your
Mm,
family, of your familia. And it's all different from everybody. Unfortunately, though, I'm gonna say this. Unfortunately, there will be people that will never get to find out where they originate from. They won't ever get to find out what indigenous group they're gonna belong to. And to me, they're they are pretty much orphans. They're orphans. They don't know their indigenous family. It's just gonna be a diaspora of that because of colonialism.
mm,
And it's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's not nothing, but unfortunately, there's gonna be a diaspora of people that are not gonna know where they originate, where they belong to. But it's not dismissing that they are racially indigenous. It's not dismissing that. You could be racially indigenous, but ethnically you will never know what you are. And that is a s- sad story to and I don't know, and I wish I can give an answer to them. Like, oh, you can be a part of us. I can't say that.
mm,
Like the Nahuas from Guerreros, like we're not the same Nahuas from over the mountain. Literally, like
mm.
You could
Yeah.
just go over the fucking mountain, and there's a different set of Nawas, and we're not united. So I
Mhm.
can't say like, "Oh, you're an orphan. You don't know what your indigenous group you belong to. I'm gonna adopt you." I can't do that. I can adopt you to my pueblo. I can adopt you to my pueblo and all that shit. Learn the customs of my pueblo y todo. But ultimately, you will never be a Nawa. You will never be none of that. You're
Carnal,
just a person that learned the lifestyle.
let me ask you this. This was something that got brought up on my channel. It stirred up a little bit of controversy. There's a lot of raza now. Obviously, the years have gone on. All the migrations are pretty much complete. Everyone is intermixed, etc. There's a lot of the raza. And when I mean raza, just to let you know, it's in the common sense, the broad general term, which is people that Mexicans, right?
Mhm.
That are mixed. So they'll have one parent be from Mexico, but they've just
Yeah,
basically
that phrase
intermixed with
comes
whatever
from
raza.
la raza cósmica, and I didn't wanna dig into that propaganda, but it's basically just saying that it's an inevitable thing that's going to occur to humanity, and that is mixing. And mixing, which is, yeah, everybody's cool, you're hooking up with, somebody outside of your racial, background. Yeah, everybody can do that, whatever. But for me, I wouldn't do it. For me, I wouldn't do it. I would love to be with somebody that is now a descent, that is indigenous as much as I am, uh, etc. Because I feel that I have the obligation or the duty to keep my people alive and whole as much as possible. But for those that want to do interrelationship, that's fine. I don't give a fuck. That's your life, your journey, whatever. But
Yeah.
do not. But I also want to say, but do not feel offended if your child comes out more white and a little bit of indigenous, and he wants to be indigenous, and real indigenous people be like, "Yo, you're not indigena." Don't do that, because it is not
Then
not
the
not the
feelings come
indigenous
out.
person's fault,
Then
and
people
it's not
start
even your
getting
child's
mad, and the
fault. But
feelings come out.
you cannot obligate to people to you cannot obligate people to see you a certain way. It's like me. I got 19% European blood in me, white blood in me. The world is never gonna see me as a white man. I'm to them. I'm just a fucking colored indigenous indigena person, or just a diaspora of lost identity or whatever. I'm never get to be white, even though I got white blood in me. And my issue is more of like, if your child came out looking white or black or all these other things, and you want me to recognize them as an indigenous person, it's like, no. How can I fucking do that? How can I give you that privilege when I don't even have that privilege from of my own to be a to if I wanted to identify as a white man, if I wanted to identify whatever part of my DNA results, maybe.
I like
I
what you
just
said.
I would never be that. So why the fuck do I gotta give, or the indigenous people have to give that privilege to white people that want to be fucking Mesoamerican or whatever? Because I see a lot of that shit, man. I see a lot of people appropriating. I see a lot of people saying all kinds of stuff, and I'm not about that. And it goes back to Rafa when I had that feud with him. Like, there's people just want to. People are lustful of the identity of indigenous, but they don't go through the struggles of it. I have privileges. Definitely have my privileges. Being born here, having a better education, having better opportunities, y todo. And regardless, because of my life, regardless of me having those privileges, I still speak up for those that don't have those privileges. You know what I'm saying? The ones that don't even have those voices. But yet somebody wants to fucking pretend they're Azteca over the weekend. To me, that's an insult. I
I'm glad.
think
I
it's
like when you
unfair.
said that.
I think it's unfair because there are people out there that are genuinely descendants of the Mexica Empire, or descendants of nobility of the Mexica people. And those people that are over here con su pinche costumes, they think they have the right to speak for those real genuine people. Like one of my students, she's actually a descendant of Motauxoma, which is a Tlahtuani of the Mexica. She's a descendant of them, right? And she
Wow.
showed me all her paperwork. I was like, damn, fool.
Oh,
You
because you
lucky
have to have
motherfucker.
with royal lineage, you have to have authenticity paperwork,
Yeah, so she
or they
has that
give it
shit.
to you by birthright.
She's a great daughter of Moctezuma, not only once but twice, fool. And how do you think
Chingona.
how did that happen? Is because some weird incest shit happened in her family history, but it's just a reality. I was like, damn, that's crazy. You related to Montezuma twice,
That's
you
great.
know?
You know, really what I was getting to, hermano, and I'm glad you said what you said. We have very similar beliefs on that. There's nothing wrong with strengthening the heritage and the culture. And then there's nothing wrong with you do you. And if you want to intermarry, then you do you. Just don't hold me by your standards and vice versa. But the reason I was
Mhm.
saying that, carnal, is because there was a little bit of a, we're opening up a controversial topic that if one is say indigenous and then the other one is another raza, say European, where does your lineage come from? Does it come from your mother's side of the family or does it come from your father's side of the family? Because if you're mixed, then the answer to that question depends a lot, cabron, right?
Well,
If it doesn't depend on each one, I don't know. What do you think? Does it come
I think
your lineage?
it varies from different cultures and ethnic backgrounds. Like here in the Americas, there are indigenous groups that are matriarchal, so they're based off of whatever your mother is. But the Mexicas were not matriarchal; they were patriarchal. They in fact they even had multiple wives. The Tlatoani people, all the great leaders, they had like 50 wives. They all were just pumping out kids and whoop de whoop. But yeah, the Mexicas were patriarchal. They were not matriarchal. So whatever your father is what you are. And for based on Mexica culture and history, if you're trying to come at me with like, oh, we're all indigenous groups are matriarchal, that's
Salido.
equivocado.
Salido.
You
Okay.
know?
So
So
the tribes that thought so there's really no right or wrong answer.
yeah, I mean, it all depends where your people are from and whatever that custom might be.
Mm,
You know,
okay. Okay.
like
I want,
here in my canton, right? For instance, I was taught. I don't know if this is how it is for you guys or for other people that are quote unquote Mexicanos, but for me, whenever we had family parties, the men would separate from the women, and they would just be like, right? That's one custom, but that custom only happens because they don't. You're trying to avoid problems amongst the men. But anyhow, another thing is that the woman, which is obviously my mother, she has more of a say of what goes on in the house. But outside of the house, as a man, my duty is to protect my mother, the woman, the main woman of the house. And it's one of those things that I don't know if it's like a global or like a Mexican custom, but that's just the custom that I am. I can't be I can't be in a room with just one sole woman that is not my woman. So whenever another woman comes over to my house, like my mother has to be there. Like I can't just be there, and 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 it's like it's I can't hang around with my nieces or anything like that. I can only hang out with the boys. It's just a weird like a weird thing, but it's a custom in with amongst my family that we just divide ourselves within our household. But like I said, the woman has the voice in the house, but outside of the house, she doesn't.
okay. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
technically, in a westernized modern day, she does. But
Yeah, no, I
when
get it,
we're
I get it.
talking about indigenous custom or the custom within my family, it's like that.
That's what we're talking about. No, I just said that the other day. It's funny. I think that is whatever you want to call it, indigenous, native, Mexicano thing, where yeah, the men don't hang out with the women. For the one of the thing is the problems that you said, absolutely, but another thing is the tendencies. We don't want the men, female tendencies. There was just always a distinguishment, always just separate them. That's how I do it, even here now today in my canton. Lo mismo,
Mhm.
cabron.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I don't know if that's a Mexican custom or what the fuck, but that's just how my family is.
see, see, see. I wanted to ask you, as far as there's one of the religions. I don't even know if you know any history of it, so I wanted to ask you if you know any kind of background on this religion. It's a religion that's really it's prevalent in the country of Mexico, and I want to see if you have any background information on the Santa Muerte.
Uh, that kind of derives from a Mesoamerican, old tradition. It's because there's Mictlan Teoctli and Mictlan, I think Siwa Mictlan or something like that. I forgot, but there's so many fucking names I can't even remember all of them. But yeah, that is a tradition. There was a celebration of the dead in Mesoamerica, and all indigenous groups of what is in Central Mexico and outside of it, they all had their own ways to honor that, right? And the reason I don't know, it's just a custom that I'm not really all that familiar with, but it derives from that. It derives from a celebration of Mictlanteuctli. So originally, when people would get die or whatever for whatever cause, die from natural causes or battle at war or whatever.
See.
One of the things that I've learned is that they would always put the person's feet towards the sun coming from the east,
Mm,
and they would always put their cabeza going towards the west, and never and once they are buried, that individual's person family or friend or whatever comes back and unearth them. They would like bring them up, get them out, porque what they were doing is le estaban entregando el cuerpo to la tierra, which is Tlauteucli. So the Tlauteucli consumed the body, just like how everything, like animals, when a carcass fucking dies,
yeah.
all of a sudden grass grows, nutrition starts growing and all that shit. So they know that. But the only
Mm,
thing that the earth doesn't eat, it's the bones. So what my ancestors would do is they would cremate the bones and use it for medicine. And this is a line to a codex, a medicine codex book that was given from the Vatican to Mexico. They were just like, "Yo, we found this libro, of medicine,
yeah.
Mesoamerican medicine," and they gave it back to Mexico. And you can actually buy this book very cheap on Amazon for like
And
ten
it's
bucks.
translated?
Yeah, it's translated.
Okay. And
But
and it
a
talks
lot of a
about
lot of these
remedies?
medicine, yeah, these remedies and medicines requires human bone ashes. But that goes back to the tradition of quemando the bones of your ancestors, of your loved one or whatever. It was a custom. But this we've always been infatuated with death in Mesoamerica. Like Mexico is probably one of the only country in the world that does Dia de los Muertos and
Yeah.
all that shit. That was like westernized. But we've always been fascinated by it. We were not
Shit,
afraid
I
of it
am too.
or anything like that.
I like Dia de Muertos. It's 2 or 3 days. We're gonna do a special live right here on Chicano Street. Miss
But
Chicano Tube. We got our face painted and all that stuff. But go ahead.
yeah, but Santa Muerte to me is I'm not afraid of it or anything like that. It's just kind of like what the fuck, like, like I don't know. To
The
me,
Grim Reaper. Okay.
it's kind of like
The Grim Reaper statues, or
yeah, like no that stuff that no me asusta because it's kind of like
no man.
well I know where it derives from, and because I know where it derives from, I know the meaning behind it, and the way that people do it now it would be like blasphemy,
Mm,
from the original take of the belief of Mictlan Teoctli or Mictlan Sihuatl. So and it just kind of got corrupted by Catholicism. It got corrupted by Catholicism, so it's not even genuine anymore. So when they're doing these prayers and all this other shit or whatever the fuck they're doing, it's invalidated because you're not doing what it was originally was supposed to be. Now you manipulated it into something that is not. So when you're doing all these little rituals to it, it's kind of you're fabricating it, and then when you're fabricating, obviously it's not genuine. So to me, I don't know. I don't. It's just it's kind of funny, but
hey, I appreciate you, man. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe over to mi hermano Kiyahuit's channel. Let me ask you this, carnal. What are the origins of La Virgen? Because a lot of
well, that
people.
was brought by Hernan Cortez. Hernan Cortez' initial flag when he got here was the Virgin Mary, and then the Virgin Mary was hidden from I think the Moors, or because Spain was conquered for 800 years by the North African people, and they hid that away from their oppressors. So when they were obviously liberated from that from their conquerors, they brought that shit to Mesoamerica. They brought that shit, and you can see it. You can find Hernan Cortez's original flag, and it was the Virgin Mary.
So
So
there's no this story that
there's no Juan Diego. That shit was fucking made up 100 years after they presented the Virgin Mary. And there's no Tonantzin either. People that say the word Tonantzin, though it's a genuine Nahuatl word, but there's no goddess or creator or energy or God, however you would like to call him, named Tonantzin. Tonantzin is just it has an honorific suffix on there, which is it's seen, and to meaning hour, nan meaning coming from Nantli, which is means mother. So when you compound all that together, you get Tonantzin, and you're all you're saying is our honorific mother. Es una forma de hablar in Nahuatl, and it doesn't. It's no. There's no that word. I see a lot of people using that to kind of still hold that Catholicism
mm,
ideologies within Mesoamerica. I don't mess with that shit, man. Like,
mm.
I
So
know
anything
I
that
know
comes
you're not
from
gonna agree
Europe,
with
you don't
me
mess with
because
it.
I know that you're, pues crees en eso, but I just nah, not
No,
me, man.
sí, yo soy cristiano, yo creo. I thought I heard this, but correct me if I'm wrong, in native teachings, and again, I could be wrong, that a
Mhm.
lot of, indigenous or some indigenous teachings have que hay un creador, but then there's other deities under him. Is that true, or is that a philosophy, or did I just make that shit up?
No, no, there was not just one creator in Mesoamerican culture. That's why I told you Tonacateucli and Tonacasihuatl, which
You named
there
like
was some
4, so is there like 4?
well, there's several, bro. There's more than like
Oh, okay, okay.
there's just several for many things and purposes. But there are like 13 main ones if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so there's a main group.
Yeah, there's a main group, but there are other ones below them, and it's just like a structure. And but fuck, I lost my chain of thought.
No, but no one's saying there was one creator
No,
and
there
then
wasn't one
spinning off
creator.
of that.
No,
No.
there wasn't one creator. There
Is
was
that a
two
European
creators in
concept?
essence. One was a feminine creator, and the other one was a male, which were like I said, Tonacateucli and Tonacasihuatl. Those were the two main creators that created everything.
Mm,
You know, and the reason why it's like that is because obviously men and women we 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 produce. So as animals, female animal, male animal, they produce. So that's why the creator of quote unquote in Mesoamerican life was at least for the Mexicas or the people of Nahua was Tonacateucli and Tonacasihuatl. But there was this anthropologist or historian named Portillo. Portillo. He has cool information, good information, but some of the stuff is not 100% accurate. This mother flower invented a word called Ometeotl. So he invented this word Ometeotl. There's no codice, there's no artifact, stone artifact that speaks of this word Ometeotl. It was actually created in the 1950s by this Portillo guy based on German studies, and he came to the conclusion of the word Ometeotl. But this Ometeotl word is supposedly describing Tonacasihuatl and then Tonacateucli, but it's a false identity. But now a lot of the
mm,
Azteca danza people they use that shit, and then they use it as a greeting. They'll be like Ometeotl, but it's not even a greeting. It's not a introduction. It's not even a salutation at all whatsoever. But
mm.
because people trying to hold on to this like a westernized thought
Philosophy.
pattern, they're trying to keep that. But yeah, there's like 13 main creators and then or gods. I like to call them creators, but it's difficult to distinguish what is genuine. Whether were they gods to us, were they or whatever. But I like to think creators.
No,
Yeah,
no.
there's like 13 main of them.
Okay.
There's Huitzilopochtli, Tezcatlipocatzin, Quetzalcoatzin, Mictlan, Xipitotec, uh,
13 of them.
Tlaloc, um, Tonaca, Teucli, Tonacasihuatl, Tlateucli, and then the feminine versions of them.
That's like
Yeah,
eight,
there's
nine right
various,
there.
bro. There's various ones, bro.
Yeah, that's
There's,
like
there's
eight, nine of them right there already. So see, I
yeah,
think okay. Yeah, I wanted to
those were
ask
like
that.
one of the main ones, but there's even other ones like Centeotl, and then even with Centeotl, there's a black Centeotl, there's a yellow Centeotl, and then there's a white one. I think I don't know if I said that, but there's four type a red one Centeotl, and these are describing the corns. You know how in Mexico we have different various of types of corn.
See,
Well, there's gods named after those corns, and Centeotl is the completeness of those corns. But there's smaller ones, I guess, or beneath that, which is like they say the white Istak
mhm.
Centeotl. Maybe I forgot the name, but I gonna next time I'm gonna get all this shit down if we do this again, bro. And I'm just gonna be like, oh, roll call, fool.
Roll call. Let's go. A to Z. Let's give them the whole index. We're gonna give them
Yeah,
all
so
the
there was always
knowledge.
like that. So, and then here's another thing too. These like for example, Tezcatlipocatzin
Hmm.
is one in another with Ocelo, uh, Tepe Ocelotl, for, or Ocelotepetl, which was like a jaguar mountain, and it's a variant of the
Yeah.
Tezcatlipocatzin. It's a variant of him, and then there's a youthful variant of Tezcatlipoca, and then there's an elder version of him. But these all these variants of them, they were named differently, but it was describing the
Mm.
same creator.
Carnal, we're almost gonna wrap up. I wanted to ask you. This is what I call one of those shiny questions. It's one of these ones that are
Mhm.
real popular on the internet. People, want to know these things. To your knowledge, who were the fiercest tribe? What was the fiercest tribe? And I know you're gonna be biased, probably, cabron. But as far as who was the fiercest tribe that ever existed
That ever existed?
in Los
Think
that ever existed?
yeah, I don't wanna look at it.
When their name got mentioned, you didn't want that smoke.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I wanna say that, you know? I don't wanna say it fiercest. I wanna
Okay.
say they're more intelligent and more, I guess, so to say, more civilized in some aspect or more developed, because in Mesoamerica, for whatever reason, we began to do an agricultural thing, and that's how civilization started to build. We started to build monuments, like the ancestors knew how to grow vegetables and their methods or whatever. You know, being at the time being advanced in comparison to some indigenous groups from the United States where they were all primarily nomadic. They weren't. Some of them were agricultural
Mm,
indigenous groups, but
mm,
primarily most of them were they were nomadic. They
yeah.
weren't at the point or at the point as the Purepechas or the Mexicas or the Maya and several other indigenous groups that didn't have the amount of resources as those indigenous groups.
Mm,
I don't want to say fierces, bro, because the Purepechas have their shit. They had their stuff going on too, you know.
mhm.
And I mean, obviously the Zapotec, the Yogi people, they didn't get obliterated, bro. They still exist, you know. Even though they got fucked up by the Mexicas, they're still around. And like those, to me, those are like signs of superiority. Like, you know, that those fueron chingones. The Mexicas never defeated the Purepechas, so you know, which is like known as Michoacán or whatever.
Yeah.
But they also didn't defeat the Mexicas. It was like a stalemate between those two great civilizations at the time. Yeah, there would might have been skirmishes at the border or territory lines of one another indigenous groups, but there was always a stalemate between those two groups, the Mexicas and the Purepecha.
So what are you gonna say? Mexica, Purepecha, are they top five?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. If you had to put a little top five list together, you're gonna say you didn't want the smoke with those two.
Tolteca, the Toltec people were pretty much pretty gnarly because without them they wouldn't be Tezcatlipocatzin, and those are the ones that presented that creator, and then Mexicas adopted that from them,
The
and
Toltecs.
yeah, and then the Mexicas or Mesoamerican indigenous people adopted Tlaloc and Huehueteotl, and if I'm not mistaken, Xipototec from the Olmec. And these are all a cluster of learning from one another. That's why I'm telling you that in Mesoamerica, the indigenous people weren't too different from one another. They had similarity, a lot of things in common,
Mm.
just slightly, but there was things that made the differences.
Now
Either
in Mesoamerica, that's only like halfway of the modern country of Mexico, right? Well, then if
yeah, it
that's
starts
if
from
it's
it's literally starts from like Centro Mexico all the way to
yeah,
Nicaragua or Costa Rica. So Salvadorians are Mesoamericans. Guatemaltecos are Mesoamericans. Nicaragua, obviously. Costa Rica, I believe so. It stops right before you get into Colombia. But all that is all Mesoamerica. The Yucatec region, all that is Mesoamerica. But Jalisco, like Aguascalientes, Zacatecas, Baja, Chihuahua, that's not Mesoamerica. That's
okay.
I think it's
They're norteños. I'm just kidding.
that they
They're norteños up there with Pancho Villa. No, I'm just kidding. But
what's
they're
it
up there. Yeah,
called?
I wanted to ask that, like on the map, they're central, and then they go all the way down. There was a lot of good questions that I wanted to ask you. Hey, Mike, ask him if the first Mexica did not use weapons in battle.
What was the question again?
He says, "Hey, Mike, ask him if the first Mexica did not use weapons in battle. O sea, they're en puro puño, or they use weapons, or from jump. As far as you know, the first Mexica. It's just a general question. I don't know.
They had to use weapons, bro, because when the Mexicas or quote unquote the Aztecs arrived to the valley of Texcoco, they had to fight. They were at the time. I forgot the Coco. I forgot the empire at the time. They shunned them to this area where it was just Tepecoat. It was just a mountain of snakes, and they had to survive that. But then after, when an opportunity came, when they were like, I guess, adversaries of an
Mm.
indigenous group, they were part of their army. They developed a relationship with that army of that indigenous group. They got shunned, and then they got pushed to the little isla where supposedly the águila
Mm.
was found. But
So is that a myth? Did that happen or that didn't happen? The águila, the this, the bandera right here.
mm, I don't know. I kind of go off based on Moctezuma's throne chair. If you see in the back of that throne chair, you'll see the águila on top of a nopal, but on his beak is Atla Chinoli, which is fire and water together. And beneath that, at the root of the nopal, is Tlautoctli, which is like the Lord of the Land. So that's what you see depicted on the throne chair of Moctezuma. To me, that's the real insignia, you know.
Mm. Now let me ask you
But
this: why do you think Moctezuma didn't just take off on the Europeans? Just a full blast. Nah, these cabrones, we're not even letting them at the beach. Just take off.
because they didn't know the concept of race. When everybody was fucking indigenous, bro, it was just based on ethnic backgrounds. Like they didn't have to deal with Africans, Asians, or anything like that. They didn't know existence of race. They couldn't they didn't get that concept yet till
So
later
there was
on.
never no Africans or Europeans on the
Hell
continent.
no. Hell
Okay.
no. So what I'm trying to get at is that, so they were intrigued by this, like the difference of appearances and etc. Right, the language they were speaking. They were just kind of like, "What the heck is this?" Just like anybody that is intelligent and civil, you're gonna be like,
Cordial.
"Yeah, like what is this?
Curious.
You know, who is this person, or what is this, or whatever, or whatnot." But the customs before was different. They wouldn't always pillage smaller indigenous groups. In fact, what would occur was they would send priests to different villages. Right, this is the custom. They would send their priests to different indigenous villages, and they would talk to the elders of that indigenous group, and then later on they will send another youthful priest, like talk to the youth or the men, and then eventually just come to an agreement that they're going to adopt to the Mexica way, I suppose, or there will be conflict and war. But before they go to war, they actually would meet each other and and delegate or talk, discuss about what was needed from them or when or whatever. So they had that custom. There wasn't a custom of just rolling up and start fucking up foods. Like it was diplomatical, you know.
Who's
So that
gone
would occur.
wild?
It would
They
occur. It
didn't do
would
no
occur.
Who's gone wild.
It would occur, but it was more of a custom to delegate who you're gonna mess with. Like
Yeah.
get in before we get into war or this
Have
battle.
some kind of palabras, right?
Uh
Have
huh.
some kind of
And
exchange.
not
Like I
just
need to
show up and
read you
start
and size you up.
and not just show up and start desmadre. Nah, it was there were
So they got
there were
duped. They got duped.
yeah. Yeah, hell yeah, they got duped, fool.
Okay.
But yeah, they didn't. Yeah, you got to put yourself in that mindset, though. Like I said, they didn't understand the concept of race because everybody was the same in essence.
Hermano, I
Everybody
wanted to
looked
ask.
alike. Everybody was moranazo and had indigenous features, long hair, y todo. And then when people of obviously that are not of our race, they were just like intrigued by it. You know,
I wanted to ask you about Malinche and the story of Malinche. A lot of people use that term for this, however you want to call her, person that assisted the Spanish. Is that fair, or did she just get a bad rap and she was just doing what she had to do to survive, or she was a traitor?
so I think she was just doing what she had to do to survive. Or to some extent at least.
Mm.
Like I said, these people didn't. Our ancestors didn't understand the concept of race and all that shit. So Malinani was fucking just thought, well, for whatever reason, she became the translator. But I don't think, like I said, they weren't thinking of the conquest in the manner of the Spanish.
Oh, Malinche is a European name they gave her. What's her real name?
Malinani,
Okay.
and they didn't. Como te diría, if you put yourself in that mindset of that time, Malinani wasn't thinking like, oh, the estoy ayudando to take over us or whatever. Maybe later on, but at first, she was probably like just like any of the other indigenous people. They were like, "Who the fuck is this bearded ass fool? Like, and smelly, stinky ass European? Like,
Este güey.
you know what I
Crusty.
mean?
He says they're crusty.
The crusty
Híjole.
ass fools,
I asked
But
Norby's that. I said, Norby's, and how often did they shower? Once a week? And Norby said,
they wouldn't
once a
shower.
month.
They wouldn't shower. Fool. They were afraid of to shower primarily,
He said what Norby said once a month. But anyways,
and once a month. Nah, they were afraid of to shower because they thought they would get sick.
oh, okay. So it was a philosophy like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
keep bacteria in or whatever. I mean, I could see that. But so she's not a traitor. She did what she had to do. What about the tribes that helped the Spanish
They were doing what they
conquest?
had. They had to do whatever they felt was best for their people. You know, we may see it as a traicionada y todo and all that shit now because obviously it changed
The
the way
landscape,
the way of
the whole landscape.
how Mesoamerica or all of the Americas was supposed to be. Who knows what it could have been? But yeah, I don't. You can't blame indigenous groups for wanting to survive or whatever they felt like it was needing or what was the best for their people. And if it was assisting these extranjeros to defeat your oppressor, which was obviously the Mexicans, then fuck, you know,
Yeah.
the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I guess I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
This would have pretty much
An
happened.
enemy, if we have an enemy in common, ¿cómo dice el dicho? An
Yeah,
enemy of
like
yours is I don't know what they say.
yeah, the enemy of my enemy is
Hijo de
my
su
friend, or
madre.
some shit like that. Yeah, but all that, te digo que they weren't thinking of that all that stuff. They did it like I said. They didn't understood the concept of race. They understood the concept of species. They know when a jaguar is a jaguar and they will fuck you up at Tequani, and all these things. But they didn't understand that idea of race.
Mm,
You know,
yeah. Hermano, if you had a magic wand, would you wave it and be like, you know what? These Europeans come over here and fucked everything up. would you waive it and say, you know what, let's go back to that and not even have them come? Or you're the mentality of like, you know what, era la evolución, people were conquering, it was gonna happen whether you liked it or not, or what would
If
you?
I had that, yeah, if I had that ability to prevent the greatest holocaust in humankind, yeah, I would have prevented it. I would love to prevent it. You know, I I feel when you get into the like really deep in your indigenous side, I think everybody gets to a point where you feel like you were robbed, even though you weren't. This happened nearly about 500 years plus. You feel like you were robbed. You know, you and I shouldn't be speaking English or Castellano or any foreign language. We should be speaking our people's language, whatever that might be.
Mm,
You know, and when you think about it, it's una tristeza, way, because like we will never know what would have came after the Mexicas because it was more likely they would have fell and it would probably turn into something else. But yeah, we were robbed from that. Our people were robbed from that. It's generational trauma, generational curses, however you want to call it. All that, is and there's people that are so indoctrinated into like, yes, it happened in the past. Like, forget about it. Like, if that's true, then why the fuck do you honor the Constitution of Mexico and United States? That shit was written in the past. The fuck does that got to do with me? You know, if you're
mm,
talking about all this, like, oh, forget about the past, then why do you gangbang for a name that was fucking 50 years ago or that was created? Like, why do you care so much? If you don't care about the past, then why the fuck you care about all these things that was written in the past?
mm,
You know, why are their things are more important and not your true identity? Because all these terms, Mexican American, Latino, Hispanic, Chicano, all these fucking terms, those are all terms to divide us,
mm.
you know? Because you say you're a Chicano and technically you're Mexican American, right? You say you're
Yes, yeah,
Chicano, bro. Mexico te ve como mexicano, bro. If the
yeah.
government sees you as a Mexican, that's what you fucking are, you know? It don't matter if the people within that country is telling you, "Oh, you're not Mexicano, you're not a Mexican." What the fuck you mean I'm not a Mexican?
Mm,
The government sees me as a Mexican, so I am a Mexican. What does the fuck does it matter if my paisano from my pueblo or my region says like, "Oh, you're not Mexican, no hablas español, no comes esto, no esto, da, da, da." If Mexico sees you as a fucking Mexican, even when you don't even speak Spanish, then you're Mexican. So why the fuck do you have to have all these uh
labels.
identities that take you away from your people, that take you away from your pueblo? Why you got to identify as that? Just
Mm,
because some pendejo from Mexico said, "Oh, no eres mexicano porque no, pues no fuiste nacido aquí y que la chingada y todas esas a lot of that shit comes from fucking ignorance, and you're gonna give the power to that ignorant person to to exile you, and now you want to feel a part of a community, so you created your own word or whatever that may be, whether it's Chicano or all these things. You're segregating yourself from your people. And me, I've had people call me pocho. I have de todo, pues, Pero a mí me vale madre, güey. Yo soy de allá,
mhm,
I hate that phrase. No soy de aquí ni de allá. Fuck you. Just for fucking pussies. For me, it's more of like, eres de allí mismo, homie. You're from there, regardless if somebody says no otherwise. Stop being a little fucking pussy and just take pride into what you are, Mexicano, Guatemalteco, Salvadoreño, whatever it may be. That's who you are. Those if the government sees you as a Mexican, that's what you fucking is, dog. You don't need to have approval from another Mexicano. Like, what the hell? Like I said previous, bro, Mexico's a diverse country. For the
mhm.
Germans are fucking Mexicans, dog. And in Mexico, the Chinese people are Mexican. The Koreans, you ever seen the fucking TikToks? The
Oh, yeah,
The Mexican Koreans.
yeah, yeah, where
Bro,
the
some of
wifey's
those
family's from,
you
Mexicali,
should
there's a lot
feel,
of Chinese.
like they're all Mexicanos, dog. So how you gonna allow those people be more Mexican than you if you are an indigenous person of the continent?
Well, let me ask you this then. Can someone claim to be Mexican but have zero Mexican blood?
But there's no such thing as Mexican blood.
Or I'm talking about Spanish, well, mixed, the Spanish indigenous blood, say, They claim this flag, okay, not the American one, but they're really proud about being Mexicano, Mexican, 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 blah blah blah.
Yeah, just like you.
But
But
they're
that's
in
the thing.
Japan. Are they Mexican?
Are you talking about like Asians from Japan being
Yeah, I'm
Mexicanos?
talking about either country. Russians trying to say they're Canadian and they have no Canadian blood, or vice versa, or Japanese trying to say they're Mexican, whatever, vice versa. Do you have to have some blood? Can anyone say they're native with zero native blood?
No, you can't be native if you have
No.
no native blood. But you could be nationalistic, a Mexican
As
or
many
a
as you
United
could
States
fly as many
American.
flags as you want.
Yeah, you could be
Mhm,
all that. That's because it's all national identity,
mhm.
you know. And but racially, no. But nationalistic, yeah.
So when
If
they
a,
do a DNA test, is there a percentage threshold? Like say, oh no, if you're less than this
oh
percent,
shit,
no,
se
it's
me
okay,
movió
it's
la
okay. We're
batería,
gonna
güey, la cámara, cabrón.
I know, we're on a good one here, and we're gonna be wrapping up right now. But is there a percentage threshold then? Just I don't even know to say if okay, you
My
are native.
apologies. Can you still hear me?
No, absolutely, I can hear you, but we're gonna go ahead and wrap
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
you
My,
guys.
my camera had just died. I'm using not a
Absolutely.
webcam.
No, 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 good. I appreciate you more than you know. Hey, we're live on Chicano Street, you guys. Go back and listen to this live, or listen to this if you're listening live, or listen to this on the replay. But everyone, do me a favor. Mi hermano has a YouTube channel. This is all I ask, and then we're wrapping this up. We're gonna go ahead and subscribe over to his YouTube channel. Run those numbers up. Mi hermano's gonna be dropping knowledge that you can't get in college over there. My eyes are just so open now, enlightened. I thank you. And the Raza thanks you, mi hermano, for everyone that was tuning
¿Qué
in
más?
on my channel and everyone that tuned in on your channel. Final words, real quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you learned something from me. And then if you got upset of some of the things I said, sorry, not sorry. It's just a different perspective, you know. And I think a lot of the times, as quote unquote Latinos or Mexicans or whatever, we're we're molded to think a certain way, that because we think of an image of what is a Mexicano, but there's no real image of what is a Mexicano, because it's just a nationality identity. It's not a racial identity, how most people perceive it to be. You got to get that shit out of your fucking head, because there's no scientifically, there's no genetically 100% Mexican, or that's not even a thing. When you say these things in the aspect of race, I'm sorry to say, but you're ignorant. You're not seeing beyond that. You got to see surpass that shit. That nationalistic stuff it's it could be poison. Just like how the güeros are from over here in the United States. The
Mm,
fucking ignorante. They forget that they're the ones that are fucking extranjeros. They're the ones that are foreigners. They're not from this land, because they're all ignorant. And you see how the power of ignorance.
mm,
You see the
mm.
power of ignorance.
No,
If you
thank you,
can't see
hermano.
that shit, then I'm sorry, my friend, but you might be one of those ignorant people too.
No, this is,
You
I
know?
think it's going to be the beginning of many conversations, hermano. Do me a favor, though, all of my Chicano Street subscribers, go ahead and subscribe to mi hermano's YouTube channel. Same search name. Just search him when the live is done. We're 30 seconds, we're wrapping up. Search him and subscribe over to the channel. Hermano, it's been a blessing. It has been my honor. Gracias for empowering and educating the raza. Mi hermanos in the casa, I appreciate you one more time, eh?
Yeah, thank you. Nimis Tlazokamati. And yeah, Satempa Nimitsitas, which I
Amen, my
means
brother.
I'll see you later.
Ándale, pues, cuídate mucho, eh? Live on Chicano Tube, live on Chicano Street. You guys, we're out on the Wednesday night edition, but remember what I always say? Remember what I always say. In the end, all you got is the memories.
¿Qué más?